Welcome to Imola, welcome to the Emilia Romagna Grand Prix. It's the first race in Europe, it's the first sprint weekend, and it's raining. I'm joined by Sam Collins, Lawrence Barretto, I'm Laura Winter, and this is a weekend that definitely needs warming up. At the moment it's very cold and it is very, very wet, Lawrence.
Yeah, we've saved the worst conditions for when we're filming this, but we had expected as we came to this weekend that it was going to be quite rainy, so I've tried to dress appropriately, but I think that should spice up the weekend.
It should indeed. Sam Collins here in Imola, how are you feeling?
I'm really excited. I like the rain. It's wonderful. It's the first chance we're going to get to see these lovely new Formula One cars, 2022 rules cars, in the wet, in anger for the first time. It's going to be really good. Hopefully we get a bit more rain all the way through the weekend because it's really going to spice things up.
It's looking wet for tomorrow, isn't it? And potentially drier at the weekend, but we'll see. Hopefully your hair will stay in good condition. It's looking great right now. Just keep that brolly over mine. Of course, the big news of the morning is that Carlos Sainz has extended his contract with Ferrari. That was the news buzzing around the paddock first thing this morning. Before we dive into all of the things going on ahead of this weekend here in Imola, we'll take a look back at Australia. Of course, Charles Leclerc, the winner there. But Lawrence Barretto is going to give us even more details in somewhere between 60 and 90 seconds.
This has quickly
Lawrence?
become the most stressful part of my weekend. But I'll give it a go. I've got Dwayne off camera. He's going to give me the go-ahead. Are we good? Charles Leclerc started on pole position. He started ahead of Max Verstappen. He retained that position for most of the race. No, in fact, all of the race, as he got the Grand Slam. Not many times at Ferrari have done that, or at least since he's been there at least. It was less good for Sebastian Vettel. Came back. Good news. Bad news. He spun. He crashed. Not the greatest race for him overall, and not the greatest race for Aston Martin, because Lance Stroll didn't score either. He had a couple of instances with Valtteri Bottas, twice got done for weaving, 5-second penalty, I think. Looking elsewhere, there was a safety car that benefited George Russell, who leapfrogged ahead of Lewis Hamilton, who was not very happy by that. He was like, guys, what are you doing? Safety car, Lewis, safety car. It was a good race overall. Oh no, I've got lost. It was all going so well.
Australia, mate.
Keep going.
Yeah, we're still Australia. Carlos
Sainz.
Sainz. It was a bad race for Carlos Sainz. He only made it a couple of laps before he spun into the gravel. First retirement since France last year. Checo Perez got a podium position while Max was still running. He passed George Russell, but then Max Verstappen retired for the second time this year, and that promoted George to his first podium for Mercedes.
Wowee, 1:07. That was pretty decent.
It was. It could have been better. Sorry, I've let everyone down, haven't I? I've let the team down. Don't nod at me, Sam. You're supposed to give me some sympathy.
But Sam, I think Lawrence thought you were doing it, to be fair. So he wasn't entirely prepared for it. So you've passed the buck here.
Well, what I'd have added was Alex Albon with that stunning 10th position, which, had it not been for a really slow pit stop on the left front of the Williams on the final lap of the race, he would have been in a really wheel-to-wheel battle across the finish line with Pierre Gasly in the AlphaTauri for 9th position.
Oh, you're right. Sorry, fair play, Alex. That was one hell of a drive, wasn't it?
There you go, team effort, fair play. As I mentioned, of course, Carlos Sainz has signed that 2-year contract extension with Ferrari. He will be there until the end of 2024. Lawrence, you spoke to him a bit earlier on, didn't you?
He could not keep the smile off his face, as you well imagined. I think he knew for a long time that the deal was on the cards, but it just took a long time to get those final details done and dusted. And so to do it here at Ferrari's first home race is great. To give him that boost after that tough race in Australia is great. And to have that contract that lines him up with Charles really shows how supportive Ferrari are of him going forward.
The timing could not be better, could it? Let's hear now from Carlos Sainz.
Carlos, congratulations. A really special day for you. A new 2-year deal. How do you feel?
Well, you can imagine, no, signing a contract extension with a team like Ferrari, a team that I already said it many times, no, that has always been my dream to drive for. And now with the opportunity to have a car to win races, to be in the fight in every race and have a contract extension to the end of 24, for me is another dream come true, to be honest. So you can imagine how happy I am and how excited I am for the future.
You've always said that you felt very comfortable at the team, felt at home. What's been the most special moment in your journey so far?
Well, there's been many good moments, and I'm lucky to say that with only 1 year in the team, you know, and I've already, it can feel also good moments coming. You know, I feel like we're working very well already. The 1-2 in Bahrain after all the hard work of last year it was a great step, and now it's time to keep improving, to keep getting better as a team, and try to keep ourselves in the fight till the end of the year.
And in the short time it took us to reposition down to, where are we? McLaren. The rain has got heavier and heavier, it seems. But let's talk firstly about Mercedes. A first podium for Mercedes for George Russell in Australia. they came away from that saying we're in a better position than when we went in to Australia. More lessons have been learned, but they're still struggling, aren't they? They still are not on the pace that we're seeing from Ferrari and Red Bull.
Feels like me in my old maths class. I've learned lessons, but I still haven't got the answers to the exam paper. And I think that's really the situation with Mercedes. They know what the problems are, but they still don't really know how to solve them. They're working on it, but they're not there yet. They've got some new bits on the car this weekend, but I don't think it's going to be the big answer that everybody's looking for.
No, they wrote in the press this week that they're steeling themselves for a challenging sprint weekend, Lawrence.
But I think the good thing for them is that they're scoring heavily when they have got a car that isn't performing to the level that they want to. And talking to Toto ahead of this weekend, he was saying that, you know, that's the best that they can do. And they're second in the Constructors' Championship. George Russell's second in the Drivers' Championship. And look, okay, they're gonna get overtaken if Red Bull sort out their reliability. But in the situation they're in at the moment, this is the best that they can do.
Absolutely, they've been very much making hay while the sun isn't really shining, but they are still managing to make the best of what seems to be a difficult situation at the moment for Mercedes. You've mentioned Red Bull and the reliability issues. Let's talk about that quickly. Of course, Max Verstappen with 2 DNFs. They've had 3 finishes from 6 starts so far this season. It's such a difficult time for Red Bull. Christian Horner insisting, look, I'd rather have a fast, unreliable car than a slow, reliable one. But there will come a point, won't there, when actually they are simply not getting the points they need to.
Yeah, that's because they're going to get a whole heap of penalties because they keep on killing off power units at the rate they're writing them off. Now, Red Bull have said that the Honda power unit in the back of Max Verstappen's car is fine. They'll be able to use it again. The back end of the car was on fire, so you've got to wonder sort of, yeah, I'm not so sure that is all going to be hunky-dory in the back of that car, and there will be some question marks about it. But ultimately, it looks certain to me that at least all of the Honda-powered cars will be taking some significant penalties on the grid later in the season when they've used up their pool of power units. Actually, I think every car on the grid probably is going to take at least 1 power unit penalty, but I think, you know, Red Bull are going to take a few more, and that might hammer them when it comes down to that close title fight with Ferrari and possibly some other teams that might get into that squabble.
Can you tell us any more about the issues that they did suffer in Max Verstappen's car in Australia and whether they've indeed been solved in time for this weekend?
Yeah, well, as far as I understand, it's a fuel leak, and when fuel comes out of the car, it does like to burst into flames. That's what fuel does. And ultimately, it does look like it may have just been one of those little problems that you just get in racing cars from time to time. It wasn't fundamental to the power unit, but we have seen fuel system issues with Red Bull all season. That's what eliminated both of their cars from the opening race of the year. So is it the fuel system that's the issue for Red Bull? And if so, why are they struggling so much on the fuel system? That's a question mark we haven't really answered yet.
Checo Perez, though, making up, I guess, for Max Verstappen's 2 DNFs so far. He's thereabouts each weekend, isn't he?
Yeah, I think for Checo, it was important for him to be on the podium back in Australia, but even he, like Max, was getting frustrated by the fact that they've got a car that should be scoring heavily, and this is the time of the year where you can't afford these kind of reliability issues when you've got a team like Ferrari who are scoring so heavily. And I was really interested to see Max and Checo kind of not criticise the team, but tell the team that this is unacceptable. And for them to be doing that this early in the season shows how frustrating it is for them. So key this weekend will be, hopefully they've got on top of those reliability issues, but that the drivers feel that the team is making progress in the areas where they need to.
That use of the word unacceptable as well, it's strong, isn't it?
It's tough, but you know what? I think they can see the championship slipping away already.
Yeah.
That's how consistent Ferrari have been. And you would have thought that at least in the next couple of races, Ferrari are going to be strong. And like Sam was saying with the engine penalties for Red Bull towards the end of the year, it might be too late to catch them, even if they do get on top of them.
Charles Leclerc, 46 points clear of Max Verstappen as things stand at the moment. We'll move on to McLaren. Now, we saw some seemingly positive performance gains in Australia. Both top 6, both made Q3. Track specific, or are we actually seeing improvements? Sam Collins.
Sorry for Team Papaya, but I think it was track specific. There weren't any massive changes to the McLaren MCL36. It's pretty much the same car they started out with the brake system revisions made there. They haven't bought the big upgrades that they need to. And I think they're sort of in the same bag as Mercedes. They've got problems, they're working on solving those problems, but they're still a long way from being able to get that car to deliver the performance they really want from it. And there are still questions about that Mercedes power unit. Is it reliable? Has it got the performance?
Yeah, absolutely. Lawrence, you spoke to Lando Norris as well. Did he reflect Sam's sentiments there?
I would say he was in actually a really good mood coming here. I think there is an acceptance that they're not going to be fighting where they would have thought they would have been at the start of the year. But I think that Australia result, if wasn't a performance gain, it was a confidence boost. And I do think that's had a really positive impact on the team as a whole. Lando ran really well here. It's this weather could throw things up. It's a sprint weekend. Interestingly, he'd forgot it was the sprint weekend. So, midway through the
That's
interview.
very Lando, isn't it? That's great.
Exactly that. Like coming in here and just doing the best that he can. And I think that's a real positive. He's in a great frame of mind. Daniel's buoyed by Australia. So, you know what? It could be a good weekend for them.
Well, let's hear it from Lando Norris.
I think since we put the car on the ground in Australia, it worked very well and we had a great weekend. A lot of points for us as a team, good points for myself. Just a very good weekend all round, for everyone, good motivation as well to kind of keep us going, keep us working hard, and also just rewards everyone for the amount of work that's going into everything at the moment. There's a lot of long hours and time getting put into developing the car and making it quicker and trying to bounce back from a tough start to the season. And bits of that are already showing. So definitely a nice weekend for us all.
Are you encouraged by what you're seeing behind the scenes? And these days in Formula One, you can't just bring things every weekend. It just doesn't work like that, does it?
No, I think, especially with the budget cap and everything, it's tough to just throw parts at it and hope for the best. And if it doesn't work, you kind of just have another go. You can't really do that anymore. It's about being efficient with everything and kind of almost knowing it's going to work, then putting it on the car. So it does take time, and it will take time for us to take any big steps forward. But I have good faith. James and the whole team back in the factory is working extremely hard to put a good plan in place and bring these upgrades and developments to the car. And I guess we have had some small ones into Australia and into Saudi. Small things allowing us to extract a bit more potential out of the car, and I think that's shown with the results we've been having. But we know we have stronger tracks and weaker tracks, and it's about trying to eliminate those weaker ones and be strong there as well, which is what we need at the minute.
Just a few teams bringing upgrades to this first European race of the season. Alpine and AlphaTauri are two of them. We'll talk about Alpine first of all. Fernando Alonso looking mighty quick at the Australian Grand Prix, but the hydraulics issues causing the off in quali. And then, of course, in the race itself, just a bit of bad luck. But the potential is there, isn't it?
And I think that's what's exciting Fernando and Esteban is this potential. If you looked at them in pre-season testing, we didn't actually know where they were. And they looked actually a little bit disappointing. And they've actually emerged as potentially the front of the midfield, and I think that's a huge step for them. They want to make progress chasing the top three teams. They've got to be improving weekend in, weekend out, and I think Alpine could be very strong here, and I think that's why Fernando's in such a good mood at the moment, because even though he felt he could have got pole and he didn't, and he felt he could have got a podium maybe in the race and he didn't, that's not getting them down. And Esteban on the other side has scored in all three races. I think he's one of 4 drivers to have done that this year. So even he's driving very strongly. So I think it could be another strong weekend for Alpine here.
Australia matched Esteban Ocon's worst result so far this season, a P7. They've got to be pleased with that, haven't they? El Plan and Le Plan seems to be working. Alpine bringing the new floor here. What's the impact do you think that will have?
Well, I think the impact on that new floor is what's going to be a little bit lively. It's got a big old spike in the middle of it. When you look at it, it looks like a bit of a weapon. So I think other cars will be a bit wise to not go wheel to wheel with Alonso and Ocon if they've got that floor on. Actually, Alpine have been playing around with it back and forth for the last few races. If it does bring the performance they expect, that car could be really, really competitive. In Melbourne, if it hadn't been for that hydraulic failure, putting Alonso in the wall, if it hadn't been for a slight strategic error, actually, I think they could have been on for a race win there.
Yeah, they really could have done. Actually, we're going to talk about AlphaTauri too. A new floor there, significant floor upgrade, revised front brake ducts as well. They're taking the risk here with that limited running, aren't they? Just the 1 hour before Parc Ferme at qualifying. And they're saying we're going to go for it and we're going to continue to develop this car.
Yeah, it's possibly less of a risk for AlphaTauri than it is for other teams, just because this is their home track. They're just literally just down the road. And for them to bring new parts here to a track that they've done an awful lot of pre-season running on, they know this track inside out. I think for them it does make sense, but for all of the other European-based teams and all of the other teams that would normally come to the first European race and bring all of their new packages, actually they're going to wait till Barcelona because that's the first track where they can really get a representative performance. So that's going to be pretty busy for me.
Yeah, it really is. This one will be busy for you as well. It's a busy weekend all round with the sprint race and the sort of jeopardy that brings with it, along with, of course, the changing weather conditions. Earlier on, I spoke to a very jovial, a very cheery Pierre Gasly, who looked resplendent in his coat.
kind of unpredictable looking at the weather forecast. You know, I've been looking the last few days, keeps changing. Sometimes raining on a day, not the other, and then it's changing the next day. So I'm just I'll see. I'll open the curtains every morning and see what we get. But I don't mind a bit of rain conditions. I'm living from the north of France. I'm used to the rain. I used to love it when I was younger and driving in these conditions in karting, and it just makes it a bit more challenging for us. Might be more unpredictable, but we're ready for all sort of conditions.
And we've made our way down in the ever increasingly heavy rain to the other end of the paddock. And we'll start with Aston Martin. Lawrence, they're in need of a good weekend. The only team yet to score points on this grid.
Yeah, it's been a really tough start to life at Aston Martin for Mike Kratt, their new team principal. It's been, in Australia, they just struggled. Nothing really went right for them. Sebastian Vettel just struggled to find a rhythm, and he just needs car time, effectively. I think he's had, less than 50 laps in the car race spec. So he just needs time behind the wheel. Lance, I think, was disappointed because I think potentially the way the race played out, he could have got a point. Aston just need to find a way to get into the top 10, because at the moment they're the only ones who haven't scored, and very quickly the season get away from them.
Of course, more points are up for grabs this weekend. We'll come on to that in just a moment. But Vettel's certainly in need of more car time, just his second race so far. Let's talk about Alfa Romeo, another team who are bringing a revised floor, just a few little bits stuck on, as you put it.
Yeah, it's great how the teams use language to say, oh, we've got a revised floor, we've got a new this. New and revised can mean it's completely interchangeable words in F1 engineering speak. And it could be, and I haven't actually had a chance to look at it yet, it could be they've glued a tiny piece of carbon fibre on, or it's a fundamentally drastically different design, and we'll see tomorrow when the cars roll out into the pit lane. I think Alfa Romeo is another team, a bit like this one we're standing outside right now. They can bring a lot of performance, and they could be nicking quite a lot of points off the teams higher up the grid.
And Fred Vasseur saying it was worth the risk for them to bring the upgrades here. The team will cope with it. Valtteri Bottas and Guanyu Zhou will easily cope with the risk that brings, the jeopardy it brings on a sprint weekend with wet weather. But FP1 is mightily important now, isn't it?
Well, it really is, and I think a lot of the teams are going to be a bit disappointed, because what the weather forecast looks like is it's going to be like this, which means if you're bringing new parts, that's really not ideal. You want to have something safe and stable, and something that isn't going to be experimental and do strange things, and the drivers to have a very predictable car, because if they don't, they have this habit of throwing it at the wall.
It's going to be an intriguing Friday, certainly. We'll move on to Williams then. We mentioned, of course, earlier on that brilliant drive from Alex Albon, looking after those tyres to do almost a no-stop race, just throwing the softs on right at the end. Points in that Williams car, but Nicholas Latifi's still yet to find his feet this season.
Yeah, Alex Albon is driving out of his skin, really, at the moment. He's got a very difficult car to get the very best out of it, and he seems to be doing just that. The team are actually in very good spirits coming here. Like you said, it would be nice if Nicky could be a little bit closer to Alex. He just seems to be struggling more. I think there's probably a little bit of a frustration from his perspective of how quickly Alex has settled in and got to grips with this new car. But as I say, the team are feeling good here. They ran pretty well here last year. And I think there is an expectation that with this weather, with the sprint, I think there's a lot of opportunities for a team like them who, like Australia proved, if they can get it right and they can nail a nice strategy or take a little bit of a different route, there's an opportunity for them.
It's a cliche, but anything can happen in Formula One. We'll move on to our final team, Haas. And of course, it's been the most brilliant start for Haas, hasn't it? And I guess a less than brilliant weekend had to happen, and it happened in Australia.
Yeah, I was a bit mystified by Haas's performance in Australia, because I haven't really bought much new on the car, a few bits here and there, but nothing massive. And I don't think it was down to those bits that they had just such a dismal weekend in Australia. They just never found the setup. The car never worked properly on that sort of track. Now we come to Imola, which isn't a million miles from the revised Albert Park in terms of circuit layout. I don't expect them to suffer in the same way. However, they do need to capitalise on this weekend, because there's an awful lot of points available. If they can run strongly in the sprint and in the Grand Prix, they can whiz away from Aston Martin and Alfa Romeo, and even start worrying teams like McLaren quite significantly when they're thinking about the Constructors' Championship later in the year.
Well, earlier on I did speak to Kevin Magnussen, who was ready to put Australia behind him. They'd learned the lessons there, and indeed is looking forward to his first sprint weekend.
Yeah, I think there's some positives. We didn't start the weekend great. The car we put on track in FP1 wasn't really in the window, and then we maybe took a little too long to sort of turn it around and get the car where we wanted it to be. But then for the race, it was actually pretty good, and the pace was right there with that middle group again. So that's the positive that we take away. That even on a track that perhaps didn't suit us so well, we still were able to sort of, the car is still good, and we it's not like we suddenly dropped off. It's you're gonna have weekends that are not great, and you just need to try and get the most out of it anyway. See if you can fight your way in to try and get a point or whatever, and it just wasn't our weekend. Apart from that, we also had a badly timed safety car in the race that was, right in the Achilles heel of our strategy. So, we move on and go to the next one, all positive.
Well, that is just about it. But, Lawrence Barretto, because as Sam Collins rightly pointed out, you forgot Alex Albon's heroic drive in Australia last time out, I would now like you to tell us about the sprint weekend changes in 20 seconds. Are you ready? 3, 2, 1, go.
So the person who will be awarded pole position will be the person who's fastest in qualifying on Friday. So that's a change for this year. And there'll be more points available in the sprint. So 8 for the winner, down to 1 for 8th place. So it just means that the guys will take a slightly different approach. There's more on the line on Saturday. The end.
Oh, 15 seconds. I'm impressed. I am very impressed. They're the sprint changes. A prediction, please, for you for the sprint race?
So I think Charles is going to win the sprint. I know that's not very exciting. And I think he's going to win the race with Carlos second and Checo third.
Wow. Bold predictions from you there. Sam Collins, care to elaborate?
Yeah, well, I've got a bit of a crackpot theory on this one. So the sprint, because there's more points available, it actually really pays a team to sacrifice their Grand Prix. With the cars that don't like running too low, they start porpoising, start bouncing around. Well, if you run your ride height lower in that danger range where your car's going to struggle a bit more in a race distance, but does give you extra performance over qualifying and in a shorter race, 1/3 distance on lighter fuel load like a sprint, you could get a really big performance advantage. So I think you're going to see some teams sacrifice the Grand Prix on Sunday in favour of the sprint on Saturday. And you could see some midfield teams doing some strange things. Aston Martin, I don't think they'll try it. Mercedes, they want to go for the big points. What about Haas? They could score some massive points and score a bit of a steal. McLaren, they haven't got anything to lose. So I'm going to predict we're going to see Haas's first victory of the season. Kevin Magnussen will shock the world by winning the sprint ahead of both Ferraris.
And for the Grand Prix itself?
Ferrari are going to win that one. For home turf, it's going to be a Ferrari 1-2, chasing a rather grumpy Checo Perez.
Excellent stuff. That is a wild, crazy theory indeed, but I love it. I am going to go for Charles Leclerc, Max Verstappen, P3, Fernando Alonso. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
What about your sprint winner?
Oh, sprint winner. Max Verstappen. There we go. Pluck that one from thin air. That is the weekend warm-up ahead of the Emilia Romagna Grand Prix here in Imola, and it's going to be an absolute cracker of a weekend. We'll see you soon.